Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my latest live stream. If you'd like to type in the chat wherever you're watching this, whether you're watching it on LinkedIn, YouTube or Facebook, just type a message in. Let me know you can hear me, give me some feedback. And of course, let me know where you're watching from. I'm always keen to know where my viewers are watching from. Now, there has been a little bit of a pause between this live stream and the previous ones. I've been a little bit unwell with the certain flu that shall not be named, if you know what I'm talking about. But I'm a lot better now. The family's a lot better now. And so today I'm going to pick up from where I left off, going through the Boeing Starliner Propulsion Anomalies report. We'll see how far we get today. I'm going to go for about an hour, about 90 minutes, depending if I'm going to melt away, because it is really quite warm in my back cave today. So yeah, it's like 32 odd degrees outside and I don't have air conditioning. So if I look like I'm melting, it's because I am. But yes, of course. So this is a continuation. So let me get my screen share working. Look at that. Fantastic. It works. So there we go. There's the Boeing Starliner. And we're essentially going to talk about that today. We're going to continue. Now, in terms of the progress we've made through this report, so this report is 311 pages. It's quite large. We've already, in previous live streams, I think this is live stream number 15, so we are going for it here. We've managed to get through section 1, 2, 3, and most of 4. So we got up to, we did best practices and certification last time in the previous live stream. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on, if it lets me. Come on, computer, there we go. So I'm going to continue on, and we're going to continue with oversight, insight, schedule, and then we'll get into section 5, which is culture and decision-making process during the mission. And before we get into that, I just want to say thank you to the viewers that have been sending me emails with various news articles and videos to watch. I've had a quick look through the headlines and things like that, and I'll be honest, I'm not really surprised by the headlines that I've seen. Because going through this report cold, I've purposefully not read any news articles or watched any videos or announcements. I've literally come at this investigation report cold. And the main reason for that is because I want to get a feel for how robust the investigation is. Excuse me, how robust the investigation report is, what they've actually considered and what they've actually documented and published, but also to give you, the viewer, an understanding of, when I'm doing the stamp-based processes, whether it's CAST or STPA, and thinking about the principles that underpin those methods. I'm wanting to show you that just by, thinking about things through the lens of those methods, you can ask some really powerful questions which you wouldn't necessarily intuitively think to ask. And of course, the more you practice that, the more you drill that and embed it in your brain, the better you'll be able to do your investigations, the better you'll be able to do your safety assessments. So I'm trying to demonstrate through doing and showing so that you get a good idea, a good understanding. And of course, if you do have any questions, if you want some help with this, you're welcome to visit my website. I'll just stick my website in the chat so that you can see. There we go. You can visit my website, and if you want to have a conversation, no obligation or anything like that, click the big green button in the middle. So this one just here, I need help now. Send me a message. Let's have a quick conversation, because you might have a burning question that take me 5 minutes to answer, and that'll save you 6 months of head banging. And likewise, if you do want to have some genuine help and support, then of course I'm happy to do that. Now, as I said, the point of this this case study, the main point really, is to work through the investigation report and then get everyone together on a live case study workshop, a free workshop, where we get together on Zoom, we talk about this investigation, we talk about the challenges with using STPA or CAST, and it's an opportunity if you ask any questions that you have personally about your things. So if you want to sign up, stick your name in there, your email address in there, join the waiting list, and then once I've finished going through the investigation report, and we are getting there now, we're getting close, we've done a lot of live streams, we're getting there. Once I've got through it, I'll send everybody on the wait list an email so that you can register and join a live Zoom session, a free Zoom session where we can go through this and talk about the challenges and talk about how things work, and answer your questions. So that's what I want to do. That's what it's all about. And that is completely free, completely complimentary. I don't expect any payment for it. My purpose, my role is, my mission, if you like, is to share this learning and this experience so that we can prevent accidents like this. Because in this, just this particular example, they were so lucky that they didn't lose the crew in this case. And of course, the aftermath of something so serious and the impacts not just on the stakeholders directly involved, but everybody on planet Earth and how that affects their mindset and everything else. So this is important stuff, and I really want to help. Really want to help. Okay, so section 4.8.4, this is where we got up to. Just prior to that, let's just have a quick look back. So we were looking at the programmatic aspects and potential contributions, and I was quite critical. And I'm hoping that the audience that saw Livestream 14, one before this one, don't interpret some of my criticisms as criticisms of individuals. I'm coming at this cold. I'm sharing some past experience and pain and suffering I've had on other similar sort of scale programs. But I'm here to help. I'm here to support. So please don't think I'm being too critical. I'm here to try and share the learning and share the experience. Okay, so let's have a look. Is anybody talking to me? Is there any audio? Is it coming through? Yes, it looks like it is. We've got this guy Simon Whiteley sending messages. There we go. There's my website address. Fantastic. Right then, let's have a quick drink and then get stuck in. That is nice and cold and refreshing. Right then, here we go. So section 4.8.4, oversight, insight. So this is organizational factor 13. Let's make it big enough on the screen so you can read it. There we go. So the implementation of the contract model did not allow for sufficient depth understanding to independently verify that the contractor had completed certification. Okay, so that one sentence, if we go back to our little jigsaw piece over here, this is the thing I want to sort of burn into your brains, burn into your minds, this little control loop. So the implementation of the contract model did not allow for sufficient depth understanding to independently verify that the contractor had completed the certification. So there's sort of two levels of abstraction we need to think about here. The first is, what is the controller, what is the entity, what is the stakeholder that is implementing a contract model? So this is, implementing a contract model, you could argue, is a type of control action. So who is that stakeholder? Have we identified them? Is it going to be identified in the next few pages and paragraphs and pages? Because of course, if we understand who or what that is, we can start asking questions. Well, they're implementing the contract model, but it didn't allow for sufficient depth understanding from an independent verification perspective. Okay, well, why was that? Why would it make sense for that controller to implement the contract model if it didn't have sufficient depth understanding for independent verification? Why would that make sense? What decisions were being made? What beliefs did they have? And of course, from a higher level in the control structure perspective, excuse me, who or what was controlling and influencing their decisions? Were they getting direction from elsewhere that said, hey, you need to not go too deep and not have, too much understanding because it's expensive and time consuming? And that might explain why they were behaving that way. So, just using this jigsaw piece can really help us to start asking some really powerful but potentially incendiary questions. Because, of course, these are senior leadership layers in the hierarchy. Senior leaders, they're not necessarily used to getting the spotlight of an investigation shone on them and their decision making. Because traditionally, and also as you've seen in this investigation report, most of the investigation focuses on the technical aspects, the direct operators, the direct controllers, the human operators, and then maybe a local level of leadership. They don't typically go much higher than that. And this investigation report tries to do that. And what I'm sort of highlighting here is if you were to use the stamp-based CAST and STPA approaches, it would help you to sort of dig into those questions and shine the spotlight in places where it might not have been done before. But of course, when you start doing that, you've got to be mindful of the kind of potential pushback and the potential for people to try and avoid responsibility and accountability. I'm not saying that's the case here, though some of the news article headlines I've seen probably suggest there is. We just have to be mindful of how we have to be sensitive to how we do the investigation. But also, not in this case, but if things had happened differently, if something more negative had happened, then there might have been a criminal investigation involved. And so we've got to be mindful about how a safety investigation is aligned with a potential criminal investigation and the tensions between those two purposes of the investigation. And then the other element is did not allow for sufficient depth understanding to independently verify that the contractor had completed certification. So then we're thinking about it through the lens of, well, there's a senior controller layer in the hierarchy that is supposed to do independent verification of the contractor. So if this control process is the contractor, what questions and what requests is this independent verification function providing? And what feedback is that contractor actually providing? And is it adequate for them to be able to make decisions? And of course, if there's a level of risk-based decision making, which I banged on about a lot last time in Livestream 13 and 14, if you want to go back and watch those, if the contractor is not able to provide detailed information for various reasons, normal reasons or potentially nefarious reasons, I'm not suggesting that's what happened in this case, but let's play devil's advocate a little bit. If the contractor is not providing adequate information for this independent oversight to be effective, then why was that allowed to happen? Was that known about? Was it, if it was known about, what actions were being taken? Were there any other controllers involved that we need to think about in the control structure model? Now, I'm kind of anticipating that, and I'm probably stealing my thunder from the rest of this section, but I'm hoping that you can sort of see, just thinking about things through this lens of a control loop, you can start to ask some really, really powerful questions that, the people being interviewed would find difficulty trying to get away from, if you understand what I'm saying. Anyway, let's keep going. So, excuse me. The implementation of the oversight insight model. So, oversight insight model, you might say, well, we might want to think about what does that look like from a control structure perspective. Let's model that model. Let's meta model it and see what it actually looks like. Who or what is involved, what control actions they have, what feedback are they provided, what should they be provided, what control actions should they be providing. Let's have a go at let's have a look at what is, but also what must be logically to enforce safety constraints. So we can start to generate potential investigation questions or even recommendations for improvements in the future. Okay, so the implementation of the oversight insight model coupled with limited resources. Oh, here we go, everybody, limited resources. So if we take who is the resources controller? What actions what actions are they taking or not taking to make sure the project has the adequate resources they need? What feedback are they receiving? Do they know that they haven't got enough resources so they can get resources, or what else is going on there? Okay. So the CCP team, crew commercial program team, and enabled a strong reliance on Boeing to perform risk assessments, resulted in Boeing determining what risks to elevate to NASA and the data necessary to assess those risks. Oh, interesting. I think I've just stolen my own thunder there. so if this is Boeing down here, let's get my little annotation going. There we go. Let's go down here. So we've got our little control loop model here. So this is Boeing, and oh no, I don't want to do that. And then this is CCP team, NASA. As I said, I'm a layperson in this respect, so I get the impression that CCP team and NASA are, from an abstract perspective, NASA is a bigger organisation, but CCP team is either under their sort of control or influence, or is a joint team between Boeing and NASA. I don't know enough about that, what that structure is, but of course, when we're building the control structure model, it is forcing us to ask those questions. You know, is this a Boeing stakeholder? Is this a NASA stakeholder? Or is it somebody in the middle? And if it's somebody in the middle, what are their roles, responsibilities, and accountability? And is there some overlap or some gaps between their responsibilities and authority and all of that kind of stuff? So it forces us to ask those questions. So the implementation of the model, coupled with limited resources of the CCTP team, and enabled a strong reliance on Boeing to perform risk assessments. So Boeing is doing risk assessments. Let's do that like that, make it look cool. There we go. And then this down here is the control process, which is doing risk assessments. There we go. So they're doing risk assessments, resulted in Boeing determining what risks to elevate to NASA. So when we're talking about elevating to NASA, what we're talking about is Boeing is making the decision as to what risks to elevate. So through that path there. Does that make sense? So their decision making. In fact, actually, let me just bring this to the top. There we go. No. There we go. That one. Bring to the top. There we go. Yeah, so why is that not going to the top? Come on. Come on, computer. You know you want to work. Right, so if we're talking about this bit here, it says there, Boeing determined what risks to elevate to NASA. So this is the decision making here of the Boeing stakeholder. So they are making decisions about what risks to elevate to NASA and the data necessary to assess those risks. But they're also, they are performing the risk assessments there. So there's kind of a mixture in, how can I put it? There's a kind of question there over what the roles and responsibilities are and who those roles and responsibilities should be allocated to. So, the independent assessor, the oversight insight model, they should be doing their own assessments themselves to satisfy themselves that the project is being conducted appropriately. Whereas if they're not doing that because they're not resourced or whatever reasons are mentioned elsewhere, and it's left up to Boeing to do that, Boeing may be, trying to do the best that they can with the resources that they've got available, and maybe they're taking on responsibilities because they're trying to be helpful, that really they should not be allowed to take those responsibilities on, or the responsibilities should be formally allocated an appropriate separation. Maybe there needs to be a firewall or something between the team doing the risk assessments and the teams involved in the independent reviews, if that makes sense. So talked a bit about that. Let's just move this out the way again so we can see what else is going on. Just put that out of the way. Agreements made between Boeing and its subcontractors. So the subcontractors as well. If you want to go again, keep going down. There's some contractors down here. So there's some contractors doing stuff, whatever that is that they're doing. There we go. So we've got subcontractors. Oh, here we go. So they made it difficult for NASA personnel to gain access to relevant design and testing data from subcontractors to validate, independently verify provided data for requirement certification. Okay, so that sounds really bad. That sounds like really bad. So is it that they consciously made it difficult, or was it just it's difficult because they're big companies with challenging processes and data access and ITAR and all of the other security related stuff? Is it that it's just difficult, or that they were making it difficult? Because they are two different things. And if they made it difficult, that doesn't sound good at all. That's something that really needs to be looked at and questioned. Now, again, I'm conscious that some of the headlines that I've been pointed to do suggest some odd things going on, although I've not read into those, so I can't really discuss them. But as an investigator, that is something that needs to be considered, if not already. That needs to be drilled in, and some serious recommendations need to be made if that's what's going on. Because, safety is a team sport, and we're all on the same team. We should be all on the same team. And if there's behaviours that suggest otherwise, then those behaviours need to be brought out into the open and addressed appropriately. And that requires strong, respectful leadership. Toxic cultures and poor leadership, causing people not reporting issues or issues not getting addressed in a timely fashion. That kind of stuff should be knocked on the head. Should not be allowed or permitted, especially in a program of this scale. It's obvious that needs sorted out. I understand that it's challenging to sort that out, but these are the kind of issues that a safety management system should be switched on to and dealing with appropriately. Fantastic. Right. Okay. Let's keep going then. So, organizational factor number 14: subcontractor insight. Boeing did not consistently obtain access to component-level data from their suppliers. As a result, NASA and Boeing lacked sufficient insight for anomaly resolution due to contractor constraints. Okay, so what we're saying here is the CCP team and Boeing team were not able to get out of the contractor the information that they needed. So this feedback path, for whatever was going on, that feedback path needs to be examined. Why was that information not finding its way through? And it could be. Let's just put this up at the top. Hang on. Let's put this up at the top. There we go. So what is it about the subcontractor's decision making and beliefs that meant that feedback path was not been fulfilled properly? Is it that the feedback path itself was faulty, bad networks and data and secure locations and all that kind of stuff? Or was it literally they were not being provided it by the contractor? And if it's a case of the contractors behaving in accordance with the contract, and the contract says that they can't provide information, well, why was the contract like that? What is it about this control actions and feedback and the decision making and beliefs of the contractor that led to these issues? Let's see what the investigation report says, because it says this is what's going on. Let's see if it investigates it and explores it. So there we go. Reluctance, inability to share data. So there's reluctance. Okay, there may be genuine reasons for that. Fantastic, I get it. but that needs to be explored and understood. Made it and the inability to share data. So, is what other constraints are going on there that stops them from being able to do that? Because again, it's entirely possible and reasonable that they were doing what they were supposed to do in accordance with the contract, and there was nothing else they could do. But that situation potentially violates those high-level safety constraints where information needs to be reviewed. So if the control structure is not working, then what changes need to be made to it to make sure that the right people get access to the right data at the right time? Is that even possible with the control structure they've got? Or do they need to second people inside organizations so they have visibility? I don't know. Let's see where the report goes. Excuse me. So this reluctance, inability to share data, made it very difficult to foster a sense of one team. To address the major flight anomalies and increased mistrust between NASA and Boeing, as well as delayed decision making. All right, this sounds really serious from a leadership standpoint. There's a fantastic book by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. I can't speak properly. There we go. Leadership Strategies and Tactics. Yeah, this book. You need to read this book. It's fantastic. I bought it ages ago. I used to be part of Jocko Willink's coaching program a few years ago now, but this book talks about specific tactics to deal with some of these issues. And I know, as a safety engineer, and being quite sort of hard-headed at times, I'm a bit more mature now. I'm not as combative with project managers as I used to be when I was a lot younger. But this book contains some fantastic strategies and tactics for dealing with those kind of things and working together. In fact, I really like a lot of Jocko and Leif's books. I highly recommend the Dichotomy of Leadership as well, and the Extreme Ownership. So please buy those books. Fantastic books. There we go. That's not a sponsorship, but as leadership strategies and tactics, there's a section in there particularly that talks about how to communicate and maintain a good relation, or maintain a respectful, trusting relationship with other stakeholders. Because it sounds like in this case is very similar to experiences I've had over the years. And when you're a young safety engineer, especially, I'm not so young now, but you feel that you've got the moral imperative. I'm dealing with this safety issue. Why is the project manager not listening to me and giving me the information I need? What's going on? This is matters of safety. Let's get it sorted out. That approach doesn't really work that well in a lot of organisations. So you have to try some different strategies and tactics. And this book has some really fantastic ones in it. I should maybe do a book review also. Comment in the chat below if you'd like me to do a book review of books that I've found as a safety engineer and investigator very useful for me over the years, being the type of person that I am. Anyway, there we go. Let's keep going. So increasing mistrust between NASA and Boeing, as well as delayed decision making. So when you lose trust, that trust is the question there about inability to share. It may be that they're not able to share for very valid reasons, but they've just not communicated it in a way to important stakeholders that those important stakeholders understand the reasons or the challenges that the provider of this information has. And that can lead to loss of trust. That can lead to mistrust. And that mistrust, it can start with the smallest of thing, like somebody says they're going to do something and they don't do it when they say they're going to do it. They're late for whatever reason. That can start to erode trust. And then as other things start to happen, that can start to lead to more erosion of trust. And even when only one actual thing has happened, conversations between different stakeholders can start to snowball into some, blow things out of proportion. And that can, lead to loss of trust as well. And, as human beings trying to work on a really complex project such as this, trust is one of the number one things that needs to be carefully managed and maintained. And if there are issues that are leading to loss of trust, then they need to be dealt with sooner rather than later, because this is, this absolutely rots the system from within and can lead to serious outcomes. Yeah, there we go. So further, the contract arrangement appeared to focus on milestones and cost first. Okay, so there's a topic there that is close to my heart, and that is, how do we write contracts that don't inadvertently undermine safety? And it is a bit of an art as much as a science. But often the safety engineers, safety managers don't get involved in the writing of those contracts. And quite often those contracts can hamstrung the safety leaders, safety managers and safety engineers, especially when they need access to information, having been in a very similar situation myself on a number of occasions. And so the way the contract is written, I highly recommend that the safety managers get involved in that, at least as a reviewer, so that they can make sure there's nothing included in that contract that actually undermines the safety control structure. In fact, actually, a good example of this is a case study I did on railways last year now, I think it was. I've put the video on my YouTube channel. In fact, let me just have a look. YouTube, Whiteley-Safety. I'll just find it and stick it on the screen quickly. Right, videos. I think it might be this one. There we go. So this is my YouTube channel. If you've not subscribed, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Come on, I want to get 1,000. Let's get 10,000. Let's get 100,000. Let's go. Yeah. So last year, let's have a look. Videos. Video. Yeah, this one. Yeah, this one. No, not that one. This one. This is the pink one. So this is a cast accident analysis case study of a rail an accident where trains impacted each other head on at Case, South Carolina in 2018. And I'll just quickly click on. There we go. Just get rid of the sound. So there is a big control structure model I did for this. Where is it? It's just, yeah, there we go. That's it. Right. I don't know how clean this is going to come up on your screen or not, so I must apologise if it's rubbish. I'll put it to one side so you can see it a bit better. There we go. So no, it's off the back of my head. There we go. You'll have to watch the video. I'll stick the link in the chat actually, and then you can watch this to your heart's content later on. There we go. So remember to like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, so in this part of the control structure, so below this level here, this is CSX Transportation Corporation. So they were the organization operating a CSX train, which was parked on a siding on a branch line. And the train conductor and the train engineer, the driver, they were doing shunting operations and moving things around and changing points, switches. And essentially what had happened is the train was parked on the siding, but the switch, the points from the main line to the siding were not reset. And so they were left in a position that if a train was coming down the main line, it would be diverted onto this siding and collide with the train that was parked there. And that's what happened, unfortunately. But between the train that was going down the main line was an Amtrak train. Now, Amtrak and CSX Corporation, they actually had an agreement, something called a host railroad agreement, which was essentially a 200-page contract, kind of. It was a 200-page commercial agreement that didn't really address safety. So it was all about how to do the operation, how to do the commercial aspects, but it didn't really consider what to do, from a safety perspective. So in this case, CSX were running the tracks and some of their own trains, and then Amtrak would come along and run some of their trains down the CSX tracks. So there's an overlap in roles and responsibilities and the rules used on different railway lines. And so this particular host railroad agreement is essentially the document that controls and influences how these two organisations relate to each other. But it didn't cover safety. It didn't cover the rules of how the trains should be operated on each of their own tracks. And so that was one of the weaknesses I identified as part of the cast accident analysis. And the reason I'm highlighting it now is because, interestingly enough, it's pretty much the exact same thing in this situation. Pardon me, in this case, they don't have a host railroad agreement, but they do have a contract agreement. And that agreement focuses on program aspects, milestones, and cost first. It should, in an ideal world, if we'd have used STPA to develop this contract or review this contract to highlight whether it contains any safety-related issues or contributes to safety-related issues, we could have identified that actually there needs to be agreement around how data is shared and made available so that they can make sure that there isn't an undermining of trust. So if you wanted a little project, I'd recommend getting a copy of that contract arrangement and going through it, trying to understand, what are the controllers, what are the interactions, how do they fit together, and I'm confident you'll find gaps in that contract related to safety and related to the control structure. And if you want help with that, send me a message via my website and we can have a conversation. So Boeing relationships with subcontractors through contract arrangements initially did not provide for contractor real-time support during the CFT mission. I mean, that why wouldn't it include that? That sounds like an obvious. I don't think you need to build a control structure to realize that it would be nice to have real-time support during the CFT mission, during any mission. Surely it's in their everybody's best interests if they at least have some representatives involved in those live missions. But again, I mean, you could say, maybe I'm being a bit sort of sharp, but you could say, whenever you're preparing for a serious next step in the project, we're going to do a flight test, we're going to do a crewed flight test. What should the control structure look like for a particular test? Who are the stakeholders that should be involved? And interestingly enough, the answer to that question is that the stakeholders involved must represent the system as it's going to be built and operated. So that if you need their input at short notice, unanticipated, then that should be available in real time. It shouldn't be, email support or chatbot support for an operational mission. That would just be ridiculous. So that, again, I'm not suggesting they just completely missed it. Maybe there's a genuine reason that they've not provided that support. Maybe it's because the requester of that support's unwilling to pay for it. Maybe it's not in the budget. And so if we're then talking about, well, if it's not in the budget, why isn't the budget adequate enough? And that's a different question for a different part of the control structure. However, this changed following the anomalies on CFT. Okay, I mean, that's a positive thing, is it? This changed following the anomalies on CFT. I mean, that should literally be a safety constraint for any project, any flight test. That should be a standard high-level safety constraint. Subcontractor real-time support is necessary during the missions. And if it's a relatively lower risk mission where they're not doing anything too exciting, which was not these missions, by the way, if there were some other missions that were not as exciting, then okay, maybe that could be relaxed in some shape or form. Maybe. But I'd recommend doing an STPA to demonstrate that. It should be used to generate requirements and then demonstrate they've been fulfilled. Fantastic. Right. So here we go. Relationship with subcontractors through the contract structure. Placed detailed design and qualification data and knowledge with the subcontractor such that the Boeing engineer knowledge was relegated to how the systems integrated with the Starliner vehicle. During the initial anomaly resolution process, this lack of Boeing detailed knowledge of the service module reaction control system design qualification and performance made the anomaly resolution process inefficient, delayed decision making, and increased the sense of mistrust between NASA and Boeing. Okay, so what we're talking about there is this relationship here, this loop here, the relationship between Boeing and the subcontractor, and sharing knowledge and information to each other. Now, I can appreciate that there's always going to be a sensitivity around sharing detailed information, from a contractual, from a security, from an intellectual property perspective. I completely understand that. But the control structure should be designed to address those tensions. And so is it a case of a subcontractor engineer should be sat with the Boeing engineer supporting them? Or is it that the Boeing engineers should be sat with the subcontractor so that they are closely aligned to each other, they have that knowledge and expertise? What should the control structure look like? Because it could be done three different ways. You could either reprogram the Boeing engineer's brain so they know everything, or you could have that knowledge in the subcontractor representative working closely with the Boeing engineer, or you could have that subcontractor member on the anomaly resolution investigation team. Yeah, the anomaly resolution process. So they should be involved in that. So I'd be interested to look at a mini control loop of that control structure just to understand how the reality was and why that reality contributed to these issues. This was identified by the STAR team, so that's the other investigation report that was going on concurrently with this investigation report. And I believe the STAR team report is included in this document, so we're going to see some of that later on. Not today. There is already a recommendation from the STAR. Insight access should be provided across the NASA Boeing teams. Suppliers build quality variability insight should be rectified. Yeah, okay. The closure plan for the crew commercial program for the associated action A21. Let's just highlight action A21. Pardon me. Is work with Boeing to ensure insight access should be provided across the NASA Boeing teams to include suppliers' data. Yeah, happy with that, but I think that should be must. Access must be provided across the NASA Boeing teams to include suppliers' data. And that could be, like I said, it could be manifested in that the supplier provides a representative, and the way that they share that data is controlled in an appropriate security, intellectual property, respectful way, not just sprayed everywhere. Well, likewise, that is essential from a control structure control loop perspective. We can't not have the right people with the right access to data. So how, what is the creative thinking? How do we build that control structure to enable that to happen and satisfy everybody's, needs and responsibilities? Fantastic. Right. So we're now going to we're going to go through 485 now. So let's just, we've done 484. We're now going to talk about schedule. So schedule is 2 pages. We should be able to get through that. I'm sure it's, 45 minutes. So we've got plenty of time. Oh, it's only 2 pages. It's really small. This is good. Should be get through this really quick. Right, so schedule. In fact, let's just check the chat, see if anybody's chatting to me. There we go. Check I'm unmuted. Yes, I'm unmuted. Here we go. Organizational factor 15. Continuous aggressive launch schedule. There we go, everyone. Aggressive launch schedule. So schedule that is potentially driving the organization off of a cliff. It's not like I've not seen that many times in the years. And then project managers just don't want to hear contrary to what they're saying. I understand that when we're doing project management, schedule is important, milestones and all that stuff is really important, especially if we're doing a mission that's absolutely got to happen. Totally get that. But if there's a mission that absolutely has to happen to a particular timescale, there are a couple of levers that can be played with. One is about quality and one is about cost. If time is the constraint, we've only got quality and cost to play with. And so if safety is an important quality, we can't be undermining safety. So the only thing that can be played with is the cost. So costs necessarily have to increase if we've got to meet that schedule. But of course, if we're not able to get resources and people to do the work, or there are various other constraints, then at some point we have to accept that the schedule is threatened. For for typical programs. Of course, if we're talking about trying to prevent an asteroid hitting the Earth or something really serious, of course, that kind of project manager is slightly different. Project management is slightly different, and of course, we need, cost almost doesn't matter in that respect. Yeah, I think you know what I'm trying to say. I think you know what I'm trying to say. Right. While schedule milestones are required to coordinate and drive program progress, yeah, there we go. That's it. Lack of runway to artificial milestone. Yeah, artificial milestone. Oh my God. Don't get me started on how completely ridiculous artificial milestones are and that they drive unnecessary cost and risk into programs. I mean, I should maybe write a book on that one topic because it is ridiculous how dangerous project management is to safety of a program. Anyway, should not be the primary driver in decisions to implement critical design updates. I agree. Then, what is the control structure here? Who has the responsibility, authority, and accountability to make these priority decisions? And who is going to take the responsibility when, the inevitable happens? I mean, I don't know the leadership of these programs. I don't know the stakeholders involved. I mean, I imagine that they're very high pressure situations that have to be in. But ultimately, as a senior leader, you have to be humble. You have to recognize, when artificial milestones are causing problems in the program and make big decisions, put your big boy trousers on and make decisions and take responsibility. Anyway, the cost of this strategy includes incremental risk assumption, continuing erosion of Yeah, I mean this. If you've got artificial milestones and project management are behaving like the milestones are the milestones and they can't be changed and that's how it's going to be, and it ignores the engineering reality of the situation, the safety reality of the situation, and it continuously drives more and more technical debt. It stresses the teams out, because you've got engineers dealing with actual engineering and physics and safety, and then you've got a program management team that are dealing in, artificial nonsense that, if everybody went home for the weekend, this artificial nonsense wouldn't make a difference. But if you don't do the engineering properly, real people are going to get really hurt. Sorry, I'm really passionate about this. I've got many stories I could tell about this kind of bullshit. Excuse my French. Anyway, these factors contribute to workforce burnout. There we go. Yeah. And deprioritization of work items deemed unable to work due to schedule. Even though they're critical safety things. Oh, yeah, we haven't got time to do that, so we're not going to do it. Yeah, but it's an important constraint on the program and the generation of information and testing and collecting evidence. Oh yeah, we're going to deprioritize that. Okay, but you're the project manager, not the safety manager, and you're making safety decisions. You do realize you're making safety decisions, Mr. and Mrs. Project Manager, don't you? And maybe you should take the responsibility for that. Let's formally allocate you some responsibility for safety because you're deprioritizing certain work items. Anyway, yeah, let me get back off my hobby horse there, rocking horse. The same strategy is perceived to being utilized in readiness to fly Starliner 1 in the fastest achievable configuration. Like I said, time, quality, cost. If time is fastest, you need to do something about quality and cost. You can't compromise on safety, or you're not supposed to. You shouldn't be doing that. So you're going to have to deal with the costs, or accept the risk, accept that you're not going to meet the milestones. And like I said, if they're artificial milestones, let's not kill ourselves or other people. If they are genuine milestones, big risk milestones, then yeah, of course. But we shouldn't be scared to make those kind of program safety calls. I know it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It is bloody hard. I completely understand that. Okay, so this results in debates regarding deferring upgrades or improvements, proceeding at risk when we don't understand what the risk is and we bullshit ourselves. Seen that loads of times. Optimistic assessment of the test plan. Yeah, there we go. Optimism, everybody. Oh, yeah, of course we can do that. Of course we could review a 200-page safety analysis in 5 days. Yeah, of course we can do that. Anyway. Yes. Optimistic assessment of the test plan and avoidance of openly discussing opinions on how best to return to crewed flight. Yeah, I mean, this one, if you have people that don't feel able to have open discussions about real things, not artificial nonsense, then you've got a real safety risk on your program. As soon as especially your safety, if you want to understand the temperature and the safety culture on your program, go and talk to the safety engineers. I'm focusing on safety engineers because I am one and I understand the context of it. I'm not saying you don't need to talk to anybody else. I'm just saying a quick and easy test of the temperature of your safety culture is go and talk to the safety engineers doing the analyses. Try and coax it out of them, understand what they think about the conduct of the safety work, the quality of the safety requirements set, but what their relationship is like with the program manager, the project manager, and whether it is respectful and appropriate or not. Because I can guarantee you, if that one interaction, that one relationship is problematic, difficult, you are almost guaranteed to have some really serious safety issues. And again, the same with staff turnover. If you've got high safety engineer staff turnover, or you can't recruit people, you can't retain people, that is telling you something is really bad in your safety program and something needs to be done about it. An avoidance of openly discussing opinions, or you'll have people like myself, I've done it myself, I'll put my hand up, I'll say the difficult thing that other people don't want to say, and then if I get shot at, then so be it, incoming fire. That's the way I look at it, is that's part of the job. I've got to accept that incoming fire. And then if it means that I have to go, because I either have to go myself and I pull the black and yellow handle myself, or I get, terminated, so to speak, then that's the nature of the beast. There's not much I can really do about that. Of course, over the years, I've tempered the way I provide feedback. But sometimes that's what it takes. But the unfortunate thing is, if you do have a leadership that decide, let's get rid of this person because it took too long for them to do a safety review when they found some serious safety issues, that can have a serious chilling effect on the remainder of the team. Because if the remainder of the team are operating in a similar space where they are finding safety issues and they're not able to report them, or they do report them and they just get ignored or deleted, that seriously undermines people's health and well-being. And of course, ultimately, it's going to result in, at the best, program delays and slips, or at worst, if it finds its way through to flight test and then operations, you could end up killing a lot of people and losing a lot of money, in the program. So, I mean, this is a really hot topic. It's very close to my heart. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons that I push so hard with STAMP, STPA, and CAS, because building a control structure model or even just thinking about things through the lens of a control loop. It can help you identify these issues and communicate these issues. Because project managers, leadership, they don't necessarily understand the structure of the system that they're a part of. They don't understand how their behavior can have an absolutely devastating impact on the success of the program and the safety of it. And there's another topic I could bang on about for hours. It's also when prioritization is called project management. They make prioritization on what safety activities need to be done, but the way they manage it in their program is based on deliverables. Oh, you need to deliver a safety analysis by X date. You need to deliver a safety case by Y date. You need to do this, you need to do that. And they don't actually look in a level of detail, more detail, and understand what are the activities actually involved in creating deliverables. Not just, the actual intellectual effort to create, an analysis, but also deal with maintaining referential integrity, the reference list, and dealing with reference issues. We've got an old reference there. Is it a problem or not? Oh, well, that's just an admin issue. We can update the reference list later on. And it's like, no, the reference list is one of the key parts of any kind of engineering activity, and especially a safety analysis. And if you're not keeping track of your references and whether they're up to date or not, and whether they actually contain the technical content you need, that can cause a lot of knock-on second-order effects. I mean, I've seen situations where you'll have a document that has a particular title on it, and that title gives the misleading impression to the project management organization that once you've got that version 1 document, that line item is complete. And then they don't manage or plan for the effort involved in updating that document and making sure it's in a final state. So, of course, when you get closer to the milestone and all the project manager sees is, I've got 50 safety documents that need to be done by X date. You need to get that done, and I'm going to, come and visit you every day until it's done. That puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on people, and it doesn't respect the effort involved in creating those documents. And then, of course, you've got the review cycle. So a review cycle for a safety document, I'd like to think, is a bit more involved and important than maybe other less important documents. But the way project managers typically treat it is we'll give you 5 days to review it, and then you've got and that 5 days to review a 200-page report. You also need to deal with your comments, review comments in that time. And of course, if everyone's rushing like, a piss in a panic to get things done, the quality goes, time costs quality, everybody. The quality goes down. So the safety documents are worse. The content is worse. They've got loads of open actions, loads of assumptions. The reference list is not updated. The trust in the content of that document gets lower. The trust in the organization that generates that document gets lower. And so the people that are effectively at the end of the process doing the reviews of supplier documents, their trust is absolutely, subsurface at this stage. And especially when they're finding, basic issues and their comments are not getting addressed, or the project manager is selectively deleting things because it'll save them time. Yeah, maybe there's a bit of a PTSD there that I need to deal with. But this kind of stuff happens all over the place in my experience. Well, maybe not everywhere, but to certain levels of extent, it does happen in a lot of places. And it is a very negative, toxic thing to have to deal with. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's that is what is going on here. Right, okay, where was I? So avoidance of openly discussing opinions, I banged on about that, on how best to return to crewed flight. So how best to return to crewed flight, the safety engineers, safety managers must be involved in that conversation, and their opinions, their decisions must be respected and not overruled. I'm not saying that's what's happened in this case, but I've got experience that quite often they get overruled when they really shouldn't be. Or you'll get I'm still on my hobby horse here, everyone, I'm sorry. Or you'll get a weak safety manager. You'll get somebody who is weak, who will roll over, say yes to anybody. They'll be seen as a team player, and all that happens is that people get hurt. Either somebody actually gets hurt, or the team below that weak safety leader they end up with stress and burnout, and end up ill or resigning or getting fired through no fault of their own. They're not a cultural fit because they're not doing what the safety manager is saying that needs to be done or not done, when they have no place doing that. They're taking risks. They're bullshitting themselves with probabilities. Oh, that'll never happen. It's so unlikely. Oh, and I've been a safety manager for 30 years and this has never happened, so it'll be fine. This is the nature of safety. We have to cut corners. Yeah, I've met a few of those safety leaders over the years, and yeah, yeah. Anyway, some of them should go to prison. Anyway, let's keep going. Safety issues come. Yeah, Figure 73 shows a heat map of the crewed flight test proximity to launch over a 5-year period. For 41 months out of that period, CFT was within 6 months of the published launch date. I mean, that, from a feedback perspective, this is the program and this is the program management. If you're getting feedback that your dates are made up and bullshit, there's a problem with the program, and you should get in there, get your hands dirty, and understand what's going on, and give the resource that they need to support it. Otherwise, everyone's just talking about unreal things that don't match reality, and there's a significant level of stress for people between understanding the reality and what's actually been said and is going on. In comparison, Artemis 2, a comparable developmental first crewed test flight that has incurred launch slips for hardware and software issues, came within 6 months to launch for the first time in the fall of 2025 for the February of 2026. See, that's interesting. That is interesting. What's special about the Artemis 2 program management compared to the Starliner? What is different about it? I would love to know. I would love to see a comparable control structure between the two of those. That would be absolutely fascinating. That would be really interesting. From a control structure perspective, what is different in the control structures of those two? Because they're effectively trying to do the same thing, from an engineering perspective. So why is that so different? What is going on? I wonder what the culture is like. I wonder what the safety culture is like. Anyway, right. Flexibility with launches and moving schedules to accommodate work is a delicate balance. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. It is a delicate balance. But repeatedly moving launch dates a little at a time will have a negative impact on team dynamics. Right, so moving launch dates a little at a time. Let's get back to our little control loop, everybody. Hopefully this will be drilled into your brain after 15 plus live streams. So who is the controller? Who is the one making decisions and moving the launch dates? Why does it make sense for them to do that? Are they trying to please a level of hierarchy above them? Are they trying to insulate the engineering and everything down here from a level of hierarchy above here? Why would it make sense for them to behave like that? And I'm not here to point fingers and say project managers are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, why would it make sense for this behavior to be going on? Because it may be that they're moving dates a little at a time because the leadership level above them is more willing to accept little moves every time. And they're, like a frog in a pan of boiling water. If the project is the frog in the pan of boiling water, if you increase the temperature a little bit over time, they're not going to notice the big delta over a long period of time. So why would the controller of the frog in the pan, why would they behave like that? Why would it make sense? Let's not assume they're immediately all bad and project managers are horrible, because that's not the reality of the situation. But what was the culture? Why would it make sense for them to behave like that? Because, of course, over time, that has a disastrous impact on team dynamics. Yeah, I've got loads of stories I could share about this kind of stuff. Honestly, I think that's probably the biggest issue for safety engineering, apart from using failure focused analysis techniques. We should be using STPA, is my firm opinion, as one of the main safety analysis methods. I think that would benefit a lot. But even having the best safety analysis techniques in the world and the best safety requirements, if you're in an organization with a control structure that is deficient like this, it doesn't matter if you've got people doing STPA. You're still going to have accidents. You're still going to burn staff out and upset everybody and end up costing a fortune and not delivering anything. This is an issue with leadership and management in complex engineering projects. Anyway, let's look at the last page then. So let's make this big enough on the screen. So this is figure 73, which was mentioned there. Look, figure 73. In fact, purple, figure 73. Figure 73. Stick a little arrow in there, from there to there. That'll do, won't it? Yeah. Right, so let's have a look. So we've got 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. First observation, this doesn't go back to 2012, which I think, or is it 2015 when the project started? So I would be interested to know. Okay, so this is launch dates for crewed flight test. But if you were to zoom out and look at the overall program management, the program schedule, starting at the beginning and how it's evolved, how it's shifted over time, you can guarantee that if there are a lot of shifts, a lot of moves, a lot of unanticipated things going on, progress not being made as fast as possible, that is a warning sign that the program is not being managed appropriately. It could be that you're trying to go to space. You're trying to do something really difficult, and that's just the nature of the project. It's difficult. I get that. But when you're doing planning and estimation, if you are being realistic, as realistic as you can, as broad as you can when you're doing your project management and you're doing your planning, and especially involving the safety engineers, safety managers, and not asking them or demanding that they give you an optimistic view of the plan. Give everybody some fat and a budget of fat in their particular area. Look at the dependencies between the activities and the tasks and the milestones. You could do a reasonable project plan and get a warmer feeling than just bullshitting ourselves with optimistic plans all the time. If you've got a project management function that's behaving like that, they are potentially driving you off a cliff to have an accident. So you can spot that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's have a look. So we've got August 2019. Don't know what the colours mean. Don't know what these mean. OFT launch December 20. Okay. So again, when you come to a milestone, you miss it. There should be an investigation to understand, like a high-level investigation. Why have we missed this? Because it shouldn't come as a surprise. It shouldn't be, on November the 31st, November the 30th, project's fine, we're going to launch in December. December the 1st, oh no, we can't launch, we've got all of these problems. That knowledge, that awareness is there somewhere in the organization, and it's up to project leadership, to program leadership, to collect all of that feedback from the different layers in the control structure and get a feeling as to what is actually going on in the project. So don't know, CTA, ICT, don't know. Crew GitLab created, don't know. IPC testing in ASIL, don't know. Something delivered. OFT2 launch May 19. So where's OFT1 launch? Okay. Crew confidence testing. Well, again, if you're asking somebody to do a crew confidence testing, there should be two inputs to that. One is confidence in the design of the thing that they're interacting with, and the other is, does the crew have confidence that the program, is actually managing engineering safety properly? And if they've got all these dates all over the place, that is a prime warning that things are not right. Something's going wrong here. It's very risky. It's accumulating technical and safety debt at a frightening rate. OFS reruns, airbags not inflating. Again, that's a functional. Airbags not inflating is a functional safety question. So if something as basic as that's not working properly, there should be an investigation to understand why that's happening. Broken burn testing, parachutes, ATC valve issues, BU guidance software testing, Haseloff nominal testing, checksum issue. Yes. Decreased fault tolerance for EDL discovered, CFT launch. So all this stuff going on, but then they still went for a launch. What? Yeah. Okay, I mean, just going back to our little jigsaw piece, everybody, if you're in program management, program leadership, and you're getting feedback that this stuff is going red, amber, green, your belief should be, there's something going on here. We need to go and have a look and see what's going on. We can't just let this drift and drift and drift. Because this is primary feedback that's telling you there's something wrong in the way the program is being controlled. It could just be it's a difficult program, it's a difficult mission. I get that. But there's lots of opportunities there to spot that there's something not right with the way the program has been managed and controlled. Anyway, right, so we've banged on about that a lot. So we've just done 485 schedule. We've now got section 5, culture and decision making process during the mission. And I'm thinking, look at the clock, what time is it? 7:25 local. So we've been going over an hour or so. Is that right? I can't see the clock. What's the run time? 1 hour, 17 minutes. Okay. I think what we'll do is we'll give it a rest there and we'll come back and pick these up. I think we could probably get through objectives and approach and then observations and recommendations. That's probably going to be a longer stream. So if I've got time tomorrow, Friday, I'll do one. If not, I'll do some next week and we'll get this finished. And then once that section is done, we've got root causes, which is quite short, additional observations, which is a couple of pages, and then consolidated recommendations 156. Then we've got the appendix fault trees, and then we've got the other investigation reports. So there's this one here, the SDRT report, and the Boeing ECCA summary. So that one's quite large. That's that's 100 pages. That's a big bit in its own right. So yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Right. Well, let's see if anyone's talking to me in the chat, listening to me moaning and complaining about safety critical project management. No, everyone seems to be nice and quiet. So I must be doing a fantastic job. Amazing. Right, well, thank you very much for watching this live stream. I will see you on the next one, live stream 16. I'll schedule it as soon as possible. And please come along, bring your friends, bring your family, bring some refreshments, and bring some difficult, horrible questions. And of course, if you want to share some experience, you're welcome to share in the chat and I'll bring it up on screen. Or of course, when I do the live Zoom session, the workshop together, you can join the wait list and then come onto that workshop and we can talk about that discreetly. So anyway, thank you very much for watching and I will see you on the next live stream. Take care. Good night.